მოგესალმებით, დღეს მე მამუკა ყუფარაძე წავიყვან.
Hello, I am Mamuka Kuparadze, and today I will host an interview at Studio Re on the Georgian Ossetian conflict. We are having a very interesting and rare guest, Temur Tskhurbati. He is from South Ossetia. This is what he calls his place of residence. However, we call South Ossetia differently. For us, it's a former South Ossetian Autonomous Republic. Anyway, we are having a political dialogue. Of course, we share different political views, but Timur is a very decent person. He's our partner and opponent at the same time. Once he fought against the Georgians with a gun in his hands. He was defending his ideas, his countrymen. Unfortunately, it's true. I hope neither Timur nor us will have to take up guns again in order to overcome differences of opinion, of political views. Timur and I can't answer all these questions, but anyway, I want him to say a few words about how he sees the conflict from the viewpoint of South Ossetia. What are the prospects to solve it? Timur, thank you for coming to our studio. I want to ask you about our common problem. Before military activities really started, in the USSR times, in your youth, can you recall any discontent on the part of the Ossetians? Did they experience any grievances about the Georgian government, Tbilisi? Were there any issues about this?
მთავრობის მხრიდან რაღაცა ტკივილი იყო ამის შესახებ?
Большое спасибо, что я имею возможность.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to get my point of view across the Georgian viewers. Let me tell you that I understand Georgian quite well, but I speak it with difficulty. Therefore, I will speak in Russian. I'd like to correct Mamuka. I don't position myself from South Ossetia. Rather, I position myself from the Republic of South Ossetia. But I think this is not going to be an obstacle to our dialogue, because reality is changing. Recently, I turned over 60, and I clearly remember 45 years out of 60. I can't remember that we had any nationally motivated conflict. Starting in Russia, I always used to say that I was from Georgia. The only case when the nationally charged differences might have arisen is sports, which is very popular in Tskhinval. And when Ossetians and Georgians fought in boxing or wrestling matches, of course we supported Ossetians. When I was in the 10th form, there was some Hereteli, champion of Georgia. I remember well that when an Ossetian boxer, Matosh, beat him, it was a big day for us. But it was not charged nationally. It was a very natural case for anyone. Well, we are Caucasians and we had some fights, but I can't remember any nationally motivated fights between the Ossetian and the Georgian. That is, both fighting sides had nationals of both nations.
С обоих сторон всегда были представители обоих наций. Вот такое было.
კი ბატონო, მაგრამ ჩვენ გვახსოვს, ჩვენ ერთი ასაკისანი ვართ.
We are of the same age, and we remember how the national movement started in Georgia. Prior to the demise of the Soviet Union, the national movement had started. To the best of my knowledge, the similar processes had started in South Ossetia, in Tskhinvali region. Then the national movement turned violent to hand-to-hand fights, murders, and the war which we all witnessed. Where would you draw the distinction line beyond which the conflict between the Georgians and Ossetians becomes visible? What was this period like in your memory?
I will speak from my standpoint, as I can't highlight all the events broadly.
This sounds interesting.
До того, как начались.
Before this so-called conflict broke out, I had been far from politics. My friends and I owned a joint venture. We worked peacefully. We grew cucumbers and tomatoes and enjoyed our lives, so to speak. I liked the start of perestroika very much. Yes, we did hear that some national movement was developing in Georgia. We had Edemon Nihas. Tskhinval is a small town, and surely I knew about Edemon Nihas. Please believe me, I couldn't even imagine that we might have a conflict. When did it start personally for me? It started November 23, 1989. when I clearly could see that a huge crowd of people, mostly men in the prime of life, was moving toward my town. If I had not been there, I would not have believed this, so long as I had then. And now too I have many friends in Tbilisi. I lived 2 years in Tbilisi, so I could not have believed this, but I witnessed it.
Года два прожил, и я не мог бы в это поверить. Но так как я был очевидец, то...
And what did you feel? Why did these people come? How did you take this?
Вот официальная цель была провести мирный митинг.
The official purpose was to hold a peaceful demonstration. I will tell you, the population of Tbilisi is 1.5 million. I think if 2 million Americans plan to hold a rally in Tbilisi, I believe that you would mind that. The same thing happened in Tskhinval. It is a small town, only 35,000 lived there then. And when such a big crowd of strong men go at your town, it causes you to react aggressively, willy-nilly, because we felt that they want to demonstrate power to us, as if telling us, sit still and don't move. I have no idea who had planned all this, but the Ossetian also have their own mind, mentality, traditions, simply pride.
Свои традиции, как сказать, просто гордость.
ეს იყო შეურაცხყოფელი?
It was an abuse, wasn't it? Did you feel scared?
Боязни не появилась, появилась...
We did not feel scared. Rather, we felt angry that they wanted to scare us. And we felt a sense of protest. Here I can see a fault with Adamon Nihas. After this visit, which, as I know, was organized by UNDP Tskhurbati, Adamon Nihas gained a lot of supporters.
Массу уже других сторонников.
ჩემი მიზანი არ არის კამათში შემოსვლა, რა თქმა უნდა.
My aim is not to argue with you. Let me explain to the TV viewers that this was an action initiated by UNDP Tskhurbati. People got together in Tbilisi. The government provided them with buses, and this huge mass of people moved towards Tskhinvali to hold a rally. Of course, the aim of this was to demonstrate power, and the Georgian people were unanimous about this. Then followed the confrontation which Timur is talking about. What happened next?
ბატონი თემური ამბობს. აი შემდეგ
Я хочу немножко добавить к этому, что вот как мне стало известно
I
буквально...
want to add a little bit. There are some Georgians who are still around, thank God. I have just found out lately that these Georgians did try to prevent these events. They talked to Alan Chochiev, who was a leader of Adamon Nihas, and UNDP Tskhurbati. To the best of my first-hand knowledge, Alan Chochiev, in particular, did want to meet with UNDP Tskhurbati. The then leader of Georgia's UNDP Tskhurbati refused him, saying that he was not going to meet people from KGB. Therefore, I can't see anything that the Ossetian may be guilty for, whatever you want to call it. The blame fully lies with the Georgian side.
На грузинскую сторону вот это событие.
შემდეგ შეიცვალა ურთიერთობები.
Then the relations started to change. The positions of the sides vis-à-vis each other changed. What was the next phase like? Do you remember when the first bloodshed happened? If I correctly remember, before that, your supreme legislative body passed a law about extending the status, and Tbilisi didn't like it. I think it was the status of the autonomous district, which your supreme legislative body wanted to replace with the status of autonomous republic, right?
რესპუბლიკის სტატუსით, ხო?
Да, именно так и было. Это было формально. Весь Союз так поступал.
Yes, exactly. It was a formal act. All over the USSR it was done like that. Everybody copied others. The status of autonomous district was upgraded to the status of autonomous republic within Georgia. It was not liked. That's when the confrontation started. Georgia and its government copied the same imperial ambitions of Russia. Not Russia, rather the USSR. I mean, there was some grading: autonomous districts, autonomous republics, and union republics. We represented the third degree, and we upgraded our status to the second degree. If Georgia stuck to democratic principles, I think it should have said, well, Ossetians, please be a republic. Let us be together. I believe this would only have brought us closer to each other.
И будем вместе. Я думаю, это бы вызвало только вот укрепление нашей связи.
მაგრამ ეს ასე არ მოხდა. მე მახსოვს
But it didn't happen this way. The then Parliament of Georgia passed a decree, declared a state of emergency in Tskhinvali. I think it was January 6, 1991. The units of Interior Ministry were deployed in Tskhinvali. Then, as I remember, the staff of militia was attacked. First victims appeared in Tskhinvali, and this was followed with military actions that were charged ethnically. Is this right?
საომარი მოქმედებები, ესე იგი ეთნიკურ ნიადაგზე. ასეა?
Осия, вот 1990 год был годом затишья.
Yes, the year of 1990 was a year of quiet and a year of preparation, so to speak. After November 23 of 1989, clear-thinking Ossetians or Ossetian men realized that something would happen, regardless of being members of Ademonikas or not, and started arming themselves as best as they could. They were army of USSR Interior Ministry deployed in Tskhinval. There was a feeling that somebody had sparked the conflict because the population of Tskhinval, including Georgians, 2 schools out of 12 were Georgian ones. That is, about 1/5 or 1/4 of the population were Georgians. Many Georgians also studied in Ossetian schools. There was some General Malyushkin who made a speech at a rally. He was surrounded by the army of the Soviet Interior Ministry, armored vehicles, and he said that the town could sleep peacefully and nothing wrong would happen. Young people may not remember, but the USSR was a very powerful state and as good as its words. So the Ossetian believed that Russian general. And in the morning of the day, which you mentioned, at 4 a.m., like Hitler did, the town woke up and there they were, uniformed people with dogs, militiamen.
5000, насколько я знаю, людей в форме с собаками.
Милицейских. Правда, милицейских.
Yes, Georgians. They were not only Georgians. They were Armenians, Azeri as well. Frankly, no one of them wanted to war. They were aggressively minded ones too, dogs. Some smart guy even brought a huge water truck to gather a rally of people to use this truck for. The population of Tskhinval would not be enough for this truck. It could not even maneuver in the streets of the town. One should know Ossetian nature. I don't even know how to call this. When one tries to show power to an Ossetian, the latter tries to resist, regardless of his weight class. This caused retaliatory aggression. The town was under full control of, as I call them, Georgian legal armed gangs.
Я их называю законными бандформированиями. Вот, как хотите это понять.
Did they do anything wrong? Did they rob people?
Нет, я не скажу, что они...
No, I wouldn't say they robbed anyone. Well, I grew up in this town. I went out of my house and I'm stopped at the first, second crossroads. They search me at every crossroad. I ask, what do you want? They answer, nothing, go home. Dogs were barking at me. Can you imagine something like that in Tbilisi? This caused retaliatory reaction and frankly, there already were some units of Ossetian militants, chaotically, in different parts of the town. They got together and it was agreed that if they killed anyone, we would respond properly. And they killed Kochiev, militiaman, a very good guy. I think he was not even 30. And after this, Ossetians started to respond with automatic guns. First victims appeared. It was even a little funny. Probably somebody was developing some theory. The bank, telegraph and governmental buildings were captured. That is in the spirit of Vladimir Lenin and Karl Marx. Tskhinval is a small town. No one needed the bank, telegraph, even the government at that moment. Our own government also betrayed us, so that part was controlled by Georgians. Ossetians controlled other parts of the town, where they lived, where their houses were located. I don't remember exactly, but this lasted until December or February. Then, under pressure from Moscow and daily shooting, Tbilisi left the town.
Вот этих перестрелок ежедневных милиция покинула город.
The militia was forced to leave the town.
Да, и с этого времени
Yes, and since then, we realized that we could not.
ინაჩილას
and started
And the hot phase of the conflict broke out. It lasted till the deployment of peacekeepers. I mean, it was the escalated period when the Ossetian defended themselves. Then the peacekeepers appeared, but they represented a constraining factor to both sides. So, this permanent war lasted till 8 August 2008. That is, some people were regularly killed.
То есть регулярно кого-то убивали.
ხო და აი ამ პერიოდში უკვე
This is a period when South Ossetia is already dependent on Russia.
Я бы не сказал, что Россия одной рукой как бы нам
I
помогала.
wouldn't say so. Russia kind of helped us with one hand. By default, there was a tunnel through which we got at least some help, food products, and we had some communication with North Ossetia. Even some volunteers came from there, not just Ossetians, but even some Russians too. But the central government of the USSR rather betrayed the Ossetian than helped, because after some time, in 1992, the USSR broke down and according to the then constitution, autonomous units had a right to choose whom they wanted to stay with, Russia or Georgia. In South Ossetia, the population voted for keeping the USSR. Georgia didn't participate in voting. That is, South Ossetia really wanted to be with Russia. Don't get me wrong, it was not that we negate all that related us with Georgia. Rather, it was a desire to survive. We did want to survive. So, that time, and emerging into Russia, even a small area, suited us. Now the situation is quite different. 30 years have passed and the population think differently. It was different then. We could agree to anything as long as we survived. And we resisted at that. We considered Russia more like a friend and a betrayer at the same time than a friend. Russia did betray us but did not give us out to be annihilated and did not allow us to get off the ground. We did not consider Russia to be a reliable ally. We even had a phrase, I mean kind of kitchen talk, but it was like this. Shall we convert it to Islam to gain some protection, so to speak? Thank God, it remained at the level of kitchen talks.
Ну, это, слава Богу, на уровне разговоров и осталось.
თემურ, შემდეგ ჩვენ ძალიან კარგად გვახსოვს
We remember well the second half of the 90s and early 2000s, when relations between the Georgians and Ossetians became friendlier. We remember the small passenger buses coursing from Tbilisi and Gori. That's when you and I met. By the way, in Tbilisi or Tskhinvali, I don't remember exactly. I went to Tskhinvali more than once. You also came to us. How do you remember this period? Wasn't it a positive transformation of the conflict?
ეს ხო პოზიტიური ტრანსფორმაცია იყო კონფლიქტის.
И, да, действительно, такой момент был.
Yes, it was. South Ossetia didn't recognize Georgian government. Georgia didn't recognize self-proclaimed South Ossetia. But it did not stop ordinary people from communicating. Yes, small buses coursed. Moreover, they entered the town. I remember I was with Russian reporters at the station and the bus arrived from Gori. And I joked, look, how can we make peace with them? Look at what Georgians write on the bus. And it was written in Russian on the bus. Gori Tskhinval. If you shift some letters, it could be read like Burn Tskhinval. It was a joke. Those Russians couldn't get at once that the name of the town Gori and Burn can be read identically in Russian. There was such an opportunity. De facto we were recognized, not de jure. No one talked about it officially. It was not necessary to write on paper that they recognized us. What mattered was that everybody knew that this part is controlled by South Ossetia, that part by Georgia. People traded and life was getting settled by itself. It was mutually beneficial. Maybe not all Georgians, but those who lived nearby, they could have benefited.
Грузины, может, не всей Грузии, но ближайшие грузины на этом могли зарабатывать.
ჩართული იყვნენ. აი მე მახსოვს თუ შეიძლება გითხარით ერგნეთის ბაზრობით.
There was the Ergneti market. It was the intersection of economic interests. That was positive. The government, however, claimed that there were corrupt deals made. Black market. I remember mixed families appearing again. Was it really so, or it only seemed like this from Tbilisi?
ახალი ოჯახებიც კი წარმოიქმნა. ეს მართლაც ასე იყო თუ მარტო ჩვენ ვხედავდით თბილისიდან ამას?
Я не юрист, и в юридические тонкости мне трудно.
I'm not a lawyer and I can't get into legal details. I would call Ergoneti market as a friendship market because business thrives there and that benefited both sides. Yes, some crime was there, but honest business is better than any crime. And business found its own way. That is, honest Georgian and Ossetian businessmen really made deals, and business developed and benefited both sides. Rather than destroying it, it should have been legalized. Both sides have lawyers, and it was possible to attach the status of free economic zone to this market. But nobody did that. Saakashvili removed it, and this connection, which was not connected with just those Georgians living nearby, but rather there appeared Megrelians and other Georgians from all over Georgia. Moreover, Kabardians, Dagestanians, others would come, Armenians, of course. It benefited everybody. Unfortunately, this public bud of friendship, as I call it, was oppressed by the Georgian side again. Yes, it might have been called as smuggling, but couldn't it have been legalized? Why destroy what appeared natural?
Узаконить. Зачем разрушать то, что возникло естественным путем?
შემდეგ ახალი ეტაპი დაიწყო.
Then started a new phase. The relations between Russia and Georgia became much worse. It led to a new war in 2008. The war unfolded on the territory of South Ossetia. It caused heavy casualties, and Georgians left South Ossetia. The local government, together with the Russians, did everything to stop the Georgians from coming back. I mean the burned down Georgian villages. What do you think about this?
აი ამას როგორ უყურებთ თქვენ?
Прежде чем ответить вам на этот вопрос,
Before I answer, I want to make a step back. We missed one point. When January 6, 1991, before Georgian legal armed gangs, that's the way I call them, entered the town, as it turned out, majority of the local Georgians had left the town. It did not happen accidentally. It was a complicity between the local Georgians and the central government of Georgia. I can't call it other than betrayal. Our neighbors betrayed us. Not everybody, though. Some Georgians stayed in the town. Yes, it is true that later Ossetians abused them and life was not good to those Georgians. But they remained and some of them live there now too. This did not turn into national hate. So my approach is different to those refugees of 2008 who were forced to leave their houses because Ossetians were stronger due to Russia's help. But those Georgians in 1991 I consider to be traitors. Those refugees of 2008 I would not call traitors. I mean those who were forced to flee. Yes, the situation in 2008 is quite different. South Ossetia was recognized by Russia. How shall I say this? Maybe some people knew it, predicted it. They say it was set up. Personally, I didn't know it.
как я вам скажу, вот, то есть исполнилось то, ну, может, кто-то это предвидел, может, кто-то знал, говорят, все это было подстроено. Я лично не знал.
You didn't expect it.
Для меня это огромный сюрприз, то, что Россия признала Южную Осетию. И
For me, the recognition of South Ossetia by Russia was a huge surprise. My approach is that the Republic of South Ossetia was created not by Ossetian reason or bravery, but rather stupidity of Georgian politicians, and Russia, having recognized us, breathed extra spirit of freedom into us. That is, I personally can't bring my status down. I got used to it. I got used to the idea that we are a republic, no matter we are recognized or not. It is not important. What matters is that how you personally perceive yourself. In past, I considered myself an honest citizen of Georgia, then a citizen of South Ossetia. Now I upgraded my status. Majority of young people have the same approach.
молодежь вся так к этому относится, огромная часть молодежи.
და იქნება ეს თამაშია.
It may be a game played by a superpower. I mean the provision of a status, which is not a real one, as you know yourself quite well.
Статус кое-кем признан, кое-кем не признан, но я же вам говорю.
The status is recognized by some, not recognized by others, but it is recognized by souls of the majority of Ossetians. We gained a feeling that we have our own country, that we are building our own state, which we had not about 600 years. We had forgotten that once we had had a state of our own. Now we got that spirit again. Of course, this is a game. I understand this too. In this game we have some freedom. Within this freedom we can improve ourselves economically, prove to the rest of the world, to Georgia to begin with, that we can build our own republic. Georgia is developing, and I see for myself that in Georgia there is more understanding of this, that some prejudices must be removed. In about 15-20 years, or rather I would say, I'm not a very good Christian, the 29 years are left to the day when everything is settled between us. Why 29 years? 11 years have passed since we were recognized, and memory of both, the Georgian and the Ossetian, must be faded away. Like Moses led his people for 40 years in the desert, a new mind has come. It means people will find an agreement on an equal basis. I think so.
И пришло новое мышление, и люди договорятся на равных. Я вот так думаю.
ეხლა ყველაფერი არის მოსალოდნელი, ყველანაირი განვითარება.
Well, anything can be assumed. Political development may be different. Theoretically, I assume anything. But as a Georgian, it's hard for me to imagine how the Georgian society can tolerate another state in the center of the country. Let's not argue about this. It makes no sense. I can say for sure that the Ossetians living in South Ossetia had not thought about independence before the conflict broke out.
კონფლიქტი არ გახურდა. მანამდე არ უფიქრიათ მან დამოუკიდებლობაზე.
Yes, that's right.
კი ბატონო. ესე იგი, ანუ მეორენაირად რო ვთქვათ,
In other words, the war, the standoff have brought them to the conclusion that it's better to live without the Georgians in a shared state, meaning to live independently. Is it so?
ესეა, ხოლმე ესე გავიგე.
Наше самосознание выросло.
That's right. Our self-consciousness has grown through contradictions. We had been cornered. We had had no other way. Russia did not accept us. Georgia tried to press us. We had had no other way, in fact. We were forced, but now it's realized by many people, and now there are two movements in South Ossetia. One is trying to diminish the status and shift South Ossetia into Russia. It is a huge step backwards and absolutely unacceptable for me. However, if it happens, I'm not going to war against Russia, and I think no one will. Though Russia itself doesn't want us to become its part. Therefore, I still hope. I rely more on Georgia. I mean, Europe provides the Georgians an opportunity to travel freely to European countries. This is beneficial for South Ossetia. Young Georgians are getting solid education in Europe. Europe has unique concepts. I understand you. It is hard for you to see another state in the center, within the boundaries of the Georgia of Soviet times. It is your view. So we need 29 years, and you and I will become respectable grandfathers and are not to be much asked about our opinions. Hopefully, our children will be able to find an agreement on an equal basis.
Надеюсь, наши сыновья сумеют на равных договориться.
ერთია ნამდვილად რომ ჩვენ გვინდა კონფლიქტის მოგვარება.
The thing is that we all want to settle the conflict. We want peace and civilized agreement on the political status, which will bring us both a decent life on the land of South Ossetia and in the rest of Georgia. I agree with you. We should move in this direction. And this should happen on the basis of mutual understanding. I want to come back to one question, though. You mentioned that some Georgians had left their houses in South Ossetia before the war, and you called them traitors. But there were others who didn't leave. They stayed in their towns and villages. These people ended up in a miserable state. They were forced out for some time. Then their houses were burned down. Does it mean that you can't see any opportunities for the Georgians to return?
თქვენ სამხრეთელი ოსები ვერ ხედავთ ქართველების უკან დაბრუნებას.
Ну, опять я вам скажу свою точку зрения.
Again, I will tell you about my personal opinion. I'm not president of South Ossetia. I'm a civil activist who supports his country. I think this problem can be easily solved. I think that those Georgians who never committed any crime, they have a full right to return. They lived on the land of their forefathers. I'm not talking about the political status. Those Georgians lived there for centuries, and they have a right to return to their native land. Now they are not coming back. Georgian policy turned them into hostages. To begin with, who suffered more at the start of the war? Tbilisi did not lose anything. Rather, the government of Georgia got only dividends from the defeat in South Ossetia. I mean, they got solid support and financial aid from the West. Only those Georgians suffered who lived in South Ossetia. They were forced out of their land. I don't envy them. Speaking about their houses being burnt down, well, what shall I say? It's a war. And the anger. Different villages were treated different ways. I'm not going to escalate this issue, but that anger in the hearts of some people, which they couldn't pour out before, they targeted at these houses and burned them down. But I want to say again that it was not hatred directed at the Georgian nation, because Leningora district, which actually had been under the jurisdiction of Georgia, suddenly happened to be under our jurisdiction.
Грузии и вдруг вновь оказался в нашей юрисдикции.
Probably you didn't expect it.
Этого мы тоже не ждали. Мы отказались от Ленингорского района.
No, we had given Leningora up. De jure, we didn't give it up, but de facto, it did not belong to us. And when, with the help of Russia, it came back into our jurisdiction, to the best of my knowledge, not a single Georgian was killed in Leningora then. Not a single Georgian village or house was burned down. That is, we did not burn Georgian houses, but rather we did burn down enclaves of Georgian armed units, so to speak. Eredvi was a terrible headache for us. I would not like to speak about it as it sparks hatred. I think we should start fresh. If Georgia doesn't want to recognize South Ossetia, let it be so. This status can be postponed for about 29 years, for example, and starts a dialogue. A week ago, Dmitry Medvedev, foreign minister of South Ossetia, gave a long interview to some German paper and said that South Ossetia should and will work with diasporas and try to strengthen the recognition. I think this should be done with the Ossetian diaspora in Georgia, as there are still many Ossetians living in Georgia and with Georgia's government. One should not escape the reality. When South Ossetia states that there is no Georgia and it can't see any Georgia, I think this is wrong, because our real border with Russia through Rock Tunnel is about 15 meters. De jure it can anything. The rest of our border is with Georgia only. So legal checkpoints must be set. Let it not be the state border, but most importantly, the life of people must be improved. Both the Ossetian and Georgian side should give up something. I would say that the government of Georgia should think about how to improve the life of its citizens and not Georgia as a country. And the government of South Ossetia should think about making life of its citizens comfortable and should not care about recognition of the country by, say, Japan. Well, if Japan doesn't recognize us, who cares about it? Most importantly, the life of people must be improved. I will bring about a simple example. If a dying Ossetian is close to death, he is transported by a Red Cross to Tbilisi, no matter he will survive or not, as it is a medical issue. If he has to undergo some treatment, he is forced to go there through Vladikavkaz. This makes the road 500 kilometers long. Isn't it stupid? Either don't let anyone go, or don't bother them. No one will become, because of this, a traitor or Georgia or Ossetia.
Как это назвать? Или не вози никого, или не мешай людям жить. Никто от этого предателем Осетии и Грузии не станет.
Temur, საინტერესო თემაზე გადავედით და
We touched upon an interesting question. We can see that the medical question is the only question that they are interested in. Ossetians come for medical reasons, not only to Tbilisi, but to other towns of Georgia as well, to Gori, Kutaisi. How do the Ossetians look at coming of some Ossetians to Tbilisi for treatment? I mean the local government and public?
ადგილობრივი მთავრობა, საზოგადოება როგორ უყურებს ამას?
ადგილობრივი თავრობა, ოსური თავრობა, ამას უყურებს ძალიან ცუდად.
The local government looks at it negatively and tries to put some obstacles on their way, urging them to go to Russia instead. Now I am answering to Ossetians, not Georgians. In order to reach Moscow, one needs at least 1 day and quite large sum of money.
И достаточно большая сумма денег.
But there are some other Russian cities.
В российских городах медицина слабее.
The medical service in these cities is not proper yet. They should develop this service. If doctors in Vladikavkaz or Tskhinval are good and the same level, no one will go to Tbilisi. I think that this is an act of goodwill, but the government behaves a way that makes people to hide the fact that they go to Tbilisi. This negative step of the government makes people's lives worse. Rather, the government should try to improve people's lives. Or, if the government is so fundamental in their principles, let it say no and arrange on its own proper conditions for people in terms of medical treatment. If the government can't do it, they are not supposed to put obstacles on the way of its people. I think this is one of the aspects that can become common ground. But I can't see any understanding in the Ossetian public yet. Last year, at least 400-500 people got medical assistance in Georgia. Some of them could have died. That is, we were provided with solid help. What was the purpose of this help is a different question. Some claim that Georgia wants, well, I say let it want it. What is bad about that? Someone could have died but survived. From my own experience, I say that they really helped me, and I was very glad. Though I didn't become less patriotic to South Ossetia, I became even more patriotic as I started to realize that it's apples and oranges, as they say. Medical assistance is one thing. Politics is a quite different thing. Yes, it is true that they saved my life, but this life of mine I put at stake for the sake of South Ossetia. I would do it again. I wish no one needed it.
Ради Южной Осетии я ее второй раз тоже поставлю. Пусть это больше никому не понадобится.
თემურ, ერთი კითხვა კიდევ.
We agree that there must be more checkpoints for more people to pass through, and we need more contacts with each other. We talked about the medical services offered for the Ossetians and Georgians living in South Ossetia. But a very painful question still is the borderization. Russian militaries set up boundary walls. As a result, the Georgians living locally keep on losing land, grazing areas, livelihood, woods. What do you think about this?
აი ეს ამას როგორ უყურებთ ამ თემას თქვენ?
Опять-таки я со своей колокольни вам отвечу.
Again, I will answer from my point of view. You shouldn't accuse Russia of putting up fences. Russia does it based on the request from South Ossetia. It is wrong to accuse Russia of aggression. Russia has agreements with South Ossetia, and Russian border units fulfill the requests of South Ossetian government. The only thing is that these requests often are not in compliance with the real state of affairs. More than 70 years we lived within a country, and this border practically was conditional. It is natural that land plots of Georgians turned out to be on the Ossetian side, and the land plots of Ossetians turned out to be on the land of Gori, Khashuri, Kareli, and others. And this is not the issue for only Georgian peasants, but Ossetians too.
Еще граничим районов. И это проблема не только грузинских крестьян, осетинских тоже.
You mean Ossetians also lost land
Осетины
plots?
тоже потеряли участки, оказывается, это относилось к
Yes, they turned out to be within Gori region. Some houses happened to be on that side. Whose fault is this and how I would solve it? I think that this is a political issue too. Again, the government of Georgia doesn't want to face the reality. They say that the border must not be there. Beyond the big thing, it can't see the little thing. I can't see a small peasant whose land turned out to be on the opposite side. Leave this border alone for the time being. Let Georgian and South Ossetian governments sit down together and draw up the real, convenient, call it whatever you want, border so that the Georgian plots are on the Georgian side and the Ossetian plots on the Ossetian side, so that these idiotic conflicts, when some cow crosses over, should not turn into violation of the state border. I mean a serious crime. I think it can be a temporary solution. I know that the cemetery in Znauri is divided. It was a common cemetery, and some Georgian graves happened to be on the Ossetian side, and the other way around. My God, what the hell is this? And the church, by the way, is located on the neutral line. Why can't we agree not to bother Georgians and Ossetians? And this is not Russia's fault.
Почему бы не договориться, почему не сделать так, чтобы и грузинам, и осетинам не мешать? И это не вина российских.
Но обязательно проводить заборы.
Is it necessary to build these boundary walls? What's the use of it? And before you answer, there is an opinion that they detain not only the Georgians who cross over, but also the Ossetians who cross over to us. Is that right? They say there are many people like this.
მართალია ეს და არც თუ ცოტასო ამბობენ.
Марталия, это действительно так.
That's true. Locals always will find a way to cross. Yes, both Ossetians and Georgians who cross the border are detained. This happens. More Ossetians than Georgians, because those who come from Georgian side, they are ethnical Ossetians. Many Ossetians live in near border villages, and they often trespass the border, thinking that so long they are Ossetians, South Ossetians won't hurt them. So they are victims of politics. How can a man who is around 80 and hardly walks be a spy? He had just gone to fetch his cow, and he is arrested. Well, it's funny. It's just stupid. But again, I wouldn't shift the blame to others. This is not a fault of Russian border units. This is a fault of Georgian and Ossetian authorities. Georgian government must be blamed to begin with. It does not want to sit and talk. Let us drop the border temporarily. This is my vision.
Временно давайте проведем это. Это мое видение.
Without the official status?
Yes, let it be so. So that a Georgian cow should not enter Ossetian land.
ქართულ რეალობაში არის გამეფებული ესეთი მოსაზრება, რომ რუსეთი არ აძლევს საშუალებას.
In Georgia, there is an opinion that the Russian side does not allow the Georgian Ossetian sides to sit and start negotiations. Let's not argue. Neither you nor I know the truth. My next question is about what you said, that in about 20 years all is going to be settled. No one knows when this may happen. I want to offer you one concept, though. In the Georgian society, such a concept already exists. I wonder if it's an acceptable one for the Ossetian side. Before we agree upon the political status, let's develop all that is beneficial for both sides: economic relations, education, relations in the medicine, arts, sports, etc. Would the Ossetian public agree to postpone the political issues, determination of the status, and start new relations with us?
გადავდოთ ჩვენ პოლიტიკური სტატუსის განსაზღვრა და დავიწყოთ ურთიერთობა ერთმანეთში.
Если вы спросите, так как вы спрашиваете меня...
If you ask me personally, I would agree. I would even welcome it. Let us postpone the issue of the status. Such a thing happens in the world. For example, Hong Kong was under the jurisdiction of Great Britain and then became part of China. There was a time when they promised to do that. 100 years, I think they rented Hong Kong. Then they extended for 5 years. I don't know whether the people of Hong Kong are happy, but it really happened. The same thing can be done here. I think so because no matter how loudly some people might beat their chests and shout that they are patriots, well, deny 2,000 years or since the day Georgia's statehood was formed, the Ossetians have always been around as neighbors, and this is impossible to deny. This is a fact. So, personally speaking, I would support this initiative. The Ossetian side also has its own claims. They say Georgia doesn't recognize us. They raise the issue of the genocide. Well, let them drop these issues. Let our politicians work together. Discuss. You and I are sitting together here, aren't we? Unfortunately, you are not president of Georgia. I'm not president either. We are talking to each other, aren't we? Why should our presidents, at least parliament deputies, sit down and talk? What are the obstacles? The obstacle may be that, for example, Georgia thinks we don't exist. The Ossetian thinks that Georgia doesn't recognize the genocide. I often ask the Ossetian a question. You say that Georgia doesn't sign the agreement on non-use of arms. The Ossetian thinks this is a reason for not talking to Georgians. I think this is bigotry. And I ask, if Georgia signs this document, would you immediately believe it? On the eve of attacking, Saakashvili stated that no attack would happen. This is just a piece of paper. Throw it away for God's sake. Sit down and talk. so that Georgia could say that their president said this, and Ossetians could say that their president said this, and the solution will be found. I would say that 100 years of talks is better than 1 day of war. Because when I come to the cemetery in South Ossetia, I start to realize, even sharper, there are my friends buried who were 23, 25 years old. I lived long enough to be 60. In past, they seemed to be adult men to me. Now that my own son is 25 years old, I regard him as a boy, and I understand that those boys passed away too young. If someone wants this, well, this is stupid. People are going to fly to Mars, but we can't divide some field which has grown with shrubbery from both Ossetian and Georgian sides.
Какое-то поле, которое и с осетинской, и с грузинской стороны заросло колючками.
ახლა კი აი ესეთ
On this sad but peacekeeping note, we are finishing our discussion. I want to remind our viewers that we had Temur Tskhurbati, public activist from Tskhinvali.
Temur,
Დიდი მადლობა, я хочу поблагодарить Мамуку Купарадзе в первую очередь за
Thank you very much. To begin with, I want to thank Mamuka Kuparadze for the opportunity to talk directly to Georgian TV viewers and Georgian people. I sincerely wish Georgian people realistically passed those European declarations and concepts which Georgia passed. I wished Georgia dropped imperial ambitions. I wish that your European aspirations were in both the letter and the spirit. I wish you luck, peace and good neighborhood with us. Thank you again very much, and sorry that I can't speak Georgian fluently.
დიდი მადლობა კიდე ერთხელ. ნუ ბოდიშით რომ ქართულად იმდენად არ ვიცი.
დიდი მადლობა თემურ. თქვენ კი
Thank you very much, Timur. Dear viewers, we promise you that in future we will have more interesting discussions and interviews. We hope that with these programs we contribute to better highlighting the conflict. This eventually should help us to solve or transform the conflict. Goodbye.
გადაჭრაში თუ უფრო სწორედ რო ვთქვათ, მის ტრანსფორმაციაში. კარგად ბრძანდებოდეთ.